Welcome to Developers Home. Today we are going to discuss about Docker. Mainly, we are discussing here about data engineering and how can we use different tools of data engineering to solve data engineering problems. Here today we are discussing about Docker. So using Docker, how can we install different tools which we are going to use in solving data engineering problems. In future, we're going to install Apache Spark, PostgreSQL, MySQL, MongoDB, Cassandra, and different open source projects. And to install those projects, we'll use gonna Docker. So here today we are gonna discuss about Docker, very basic concepts of Docker so that we can use it in a future. If you go to developershome.blog page where we are discussing various problems and we are discussing about data engineering, Python, Docker, SQL, non-SQL, big data, Spark, and all other technical problems. Now, here if you go to data engineering and select in data engineering Docker, so you will have blogs related to Docker. So today we're gonna start with very basic concepts of Docker, and after that we'll deploy one application from the scratch using Docker. So let's start what is Docker. If you want to go through these blogs and want to read this in detail, you can go to developershome.blog or developershome.in and then go to data engineering and Docker and just go through all the details about Docker. So we used to deploy application earlier. So now why should we use Docker and what is actually Docker is? So let's consider that earlier we used to design applications. I'm taking example as a Python because in a future we are designing this all the programs in a Python and we'll also try to solve data engineering problems using Python. Python is very famous language in data engineering and it's also very easy to understand and it's very easy to learn from the scratch. So let's consider that I have designed one data engineering pipelines, data loading pipelines using Python, and now I want to deploy it. Or there is one application, let's say web application or a web server which is designed in a Python, and now I want to deploy. So in normal scenario, what we do that we have one server where we deploy our application. So thing is, that let's say that server is having multiple applications are installed and they all are sharing same resources. It means CPU, memory, and hard disk and everything. So if there is a scenario where that one application is highly used, other application might not get resources, or if that due to one application, if server crashes, all other applications might get impacted. And when we consider scenario where that we upgrade version of Python in one application, so we need to entirely update that Python version on that server. So it may be that that other applications which currently not require any upgrade, but we need to upgrade that, we need to test that. So these are the that complications we have with the current design and current architecture. So there is a concept of Docker which that it will help us for overcoming these all problems. And currently when we that design these applications, let's say today we are deploying this on Windows Server, tomorrow we are deploying it on like Azure Cloud or AWS Cloud, or let's say we are moving it from Windows Server to Linux Server. We might need to change all the configurations. We need to like note down all the configurations and we need to configure everything again on other server when we are migrating. So instead of that, if we use Docker, so Docker is having advantage. What is actually Docker container? So in Docker, we have concept of container and image. So here what we do when we design any application, so when we are deploying, we list down everything that, okay, these are the steps we wanna continue when we are deploying this application. And then, that we create container and then we create image. So image is what? It's like kind of you can consider as a .exe file. And you can that deploy that in a Windows server, or you can install on a Linux server, you can deploy on any cloud provider. AWS, Azure, or GCP, where they are providing options, that you can directly go and deploy this Docker container. Advantage of Docker container is like you can assign specific memory, CPU, and resources to that particular Docker container. If you want to migrate your app from one application to other application, or if you want to migrate from one server to other server, you can just deploy easily without configuring everything from the scratch. And all are the, that if you are still deploying this, all the applications on a same server, they all have they all have their own environment. It means one application which is totally isolated from other application, and they all have their own CPU, memory, network configuration. They have they have their own OS, so they can configure as it when it require. So these are the advantages we are getting from Docker. So if you go through this blog, you will get to know that, okay, what are the basic concepts of Docker? What are the advantages of using Docker instead of using current environment? And then next step is to install Docker in your desktop. So if you go to this Docker desktop application, so from there you will get to know that just install that on your Windows machine or in your Mac or in your Linux system. It's very easy to install. And once you have this Docker install, so you will see something like this. So where you see that, okay, a Docker, and then you will see here it's a running. So on left hand side you will see containers or apps. So here it will list all the running containers. Second thing is images. So what all images you have created, it will be listed here. And volumes. Volumes is that when we are deploying any applications, we need to attach volume, so that we can physically store data somewhere. Because when we creating Docker images, or when we create container, or when we start container, it will install everything from the scratch. So if you are storing data into database, it will be not there if you are starting that container. So here we have option that we can attach or detach volumes. So that when you starting your container again, you will still have those data available with you. We'll discuss on this on more details. So what is actually container, what is image, those all things we'll discuss in more details. But for now, just understand that Docker is, that it's a very easy to deploy application using Docker. And there are, that open source projects, and there are big companies. Now what they are doing is they are creating their own Docker image and put it on Docker Hub. So what is Docker Hub? Docker Hub is like we have Play Store for Android, or that we have App Store for iOS. Same way we have Docker Hub. So where they have this all the open source project, they create their own image, they put it there, and we just need to pull those images and we can just start container. So it's all configured, everything. We don't need to consider of that configuring that, okay, this is the IP port required, this is the network configuration, but they do this everything on their own. So we just pull that and start that Docker container. So it's very easy to install any applications. Let's say scenario of Apache Spark. So Apache Spark, they have their image available in Docker Hub. So we'll just pull that image, start Docker container, and we'll have Apache Spark available with us. And if you're considering installing Apache Spark manually in your system, there are lots of configurations are required. And it's very difficult to do, while that here you just pull that image, install it, create container, and you have your Docker environment is ready for you. Same way, PostgreSQL, MySQL, any applications, you will get that Docker image available there, and you can simply pull it and you can start your container. In our next blog, I have explained that, okay, how to do that. So if I go to here, create your first Docker container. So here I am discussing about that topic. So if I go here and if I go to next blog, where I am discussing about create first Docker container and apps. So, okay, as we discussed earlier that we have installed our Docker in our system. So now if I go to a terminal, and on terminal, if I just try that, okay, Docker PS. So these are the, that basic commands which will help us. So Docker PS, which will list what are the all running containers. Same way we have seen that using this Docker desktop, here we are saying that there is no running container. Same way, here also we are saying that there is no running container. If I do Docker image ls, it will list down what all images I have available with me. So I have one image which I have created earlier. So it is listing here. So now you see that the first step is we'll use any image which is currently available, and we will pull it from Docker Hub, and we'll see how it works. So let's say before that, I'm going to Docker Hub. So we'll see that, okay, what all things available on Docker Hub. Let's go here and search for Docker Hub. And on a Docker Hub, we'll see that these are the all ready images available. Let me search for Spark. So if I search Spark, I will see that, okay, these are the all images are available. And you see that, okay, it's like more than 10 million downloads are available, and they are actively updating their images. So let's say today there is a Apache Spark version 3.2.1 is available. In a few days, you will have image available. So you can just pull that image and create container and start using Apache Spark. That same thing we're gonna do in a future when that we'll be solving this all data engineering problems, or when we're learning this Apache Spark. Next step is what I am doing is here. I'm just going here and so this is getting started, which is actually Docker container image available on Docker Hub. So we are gonna just pull that from here. So if I search here, getting started, so I'll be getting that image here. So this is Docker getting started. So what we are gonna do is we are just pull this image from here. So our first step is we are pulling this image plus we are running this image. So let's try that and we'll see how it is working. So if I'm doing this here, and now I am saying that first pull this image, and second step is run this image, and we have specified that underscore p and that 8080. It means we are also doing port binding that we'll discuss later, but it's what it says that, okay, it's unable to find image locally. So this image is not locally available in my Docker desktop. So first it will go and check, do I have that image available here it locally? No. And now second step, it is going to remotely, which is like Docker Hub, and then downloading it from there. So what it says is download is done, and second step is it's also starting that application. So now if I do Docker image ls, we'll be having one more image, which is Docker getting started. We can see that, okay, this is latest and downloaded 47 MB of image. And if I go and check Docker PS, here it says that, okay, there is a container also created, and they randomly give name of that container. So here we see that we have specified that we have not specified name. If we say that under test t and that name of that image, so we can also give name, so we can identify that, okay, this is my image, which is the purpose of this image. So we can also give our own names, but if we don't specify name, it will randomly provide name. So here we see that, okay, this is a container which is created and now it's running, and if you want to access that, we can access using port 80. Same thing on Docker desktop application, we can see that, okay, this is running, and we can also see that when this started, these are the steps it followed. So now if I go to images, I can see that, okay, this is the image I have, and from one image you can create multiple containers. So image is a one thing, which is that just consider that it is a .exe, and now you can install on a one server, you can create multiple containers. So let's say I have currently this is a one container. Second, I can create one more container. So let's try that. I will create one more container, but now what I will gonna do is I will change port. Before that, we'll just go and try that, okay, this is working or not. So if you click on this and say open in a browser, so here we say that on a local host, this app is currently running. Now, second thing is I think I will use some other ports and we'll try that, okay, is it working or not? So if I go here, because port 80 is currently used. So now if I use port 8080, we'll see, okay, 80 is port is already currently using. So now if I go here, and I also need to use something with name, so we'll be sure that, okay, this is the new image which we have new container. Okay, I think it's not even supporting. Okay, so now if I go and see Docker PS, it's not showing here. Let's see what we can see here. Okay, it got fail. What is the reason behind that? Or let's just create it from here, image. And if I go and say, okay, run container option, port I want to use 8888, maybe something is running there. And if I say that, okay, taste one and run, it should be running now. So this is running on 8888. Earlier I tried with port 8080, it didn't work. There might be other applications which is running on port 8080. So now if I go here and say, okay, so now this is running on port 8888 and this is running on port 80. So this is how you know that using one image I can create multiple containers, and these both applications are that they are totally isolated. Both is having plain vanilla Linux system, and on top of that all the configurations and setups are done, and basically they have created one web server and where they have this all the documentation on how to using Docker container. So currently on a same server we have two separate applications are running. So this is that how we have pull image from Docker Hub and started our application. So now that in the next video, what we'll be gonna do is we'll create application from this scratch. So we'll write a Python code, we'll create a web server, and then we deploy that web server or deploy that application on Docker, and same way we will test that. So we'll see you in the next video. Thank you.